What do you see the very specific role of community-based organizations in collaborating with the city in delivering services as well as policies?
Well, you know, I'm not sure. It depends on the program, and obviously in Kids First, you guys are the predominant group, and that's why. But I do think that we have these different silos, and so that's why I talked about. I'd like to see a strategic plan for young people in the city, and I'd like to have when we were talking about Measure D. With Mr. Hanneman, I was saying that I'd like to see, as part of both the Measure D process, but now the Measure Y process, and now that you have Tony Smith talking about whole schools, I'd actually like to see us come together and do a discussion on what's our overall strategic plan. What are the real, I mean, something that's actually very data rich, that is really measuring neighborhood by neighborhood, what are the services, what are the needs, what are our collective goals on this, and to measure ourselves. And so I'd like to do that, and I'd like to be able to issue a joint sort of city report card on the situation of youth, similar to maybe the Philadelphia report card, et cetera, where we really talk about youth, all the aspects, whether it's the health aspects from the county, the school aspects, the after school and recreational aspects at the city, or the violence prevention from the city, to give a full sort of picture of the situation in youth every year. And the reason I like report cards is, one, it measures progress, and secondly, it makes us sort of have to determine what our priorities are and what we want measured. So, you know, we have two probably of the best evaluation systems now, I think, through Measure Y and Kids First, where each of you get rated on, your parents get the vote, your kids get the vote, and then we compare you each to how much dollar per hour, how many kids you serve, et cetera. And for some of you, it's probably a lot of paperwork, more than you want, but a lot of people just who don't know what's happening, just, oh, all these monies are just wasted. And I said, and they never get evaluated. I said, oh, no, here's the evaluation. Look at the program. You know, tell me another program where the students and the parents get asked on a regular basis what their satisfaction rate is. I mean, I tried to get that done in the school district and never did. And I wanted kids to be able to rate their schools, and, you know, parents be more regularly be able to rate their schools in a way that wouldn't be threatening to teachers, but would at least give a constant feedback. And so that's one area. And then the other area, I think, major collaboration is, we're probably not going to get a lot of resources, so how can we share resources? How can we open up facilities? I think that's a question you asked somewhere else. Facilities, playgrounds, so that we have more use of each other's facilities. And but I think the planning is pretty critical, as I earlier talked about preschools. We really need to get the city and the school district to sit down and say, okay, where are we now? Where are our programs located? But where are the kids who need the most help? And where can we pull whatever new or existing resources are to make sure at least those kids get served?
Can you speak, though, a little bit more specifically in terms of how you would bring community-based organizations into those processes?
Well, I think that you'd have an equal seat at the table on those forums. I mean, it is a partnership. I think that's what we're talking about. It is. One of the things I inherited when I walked onto the city council from the school board, I had never realized that there was such animus between maybe some of the city providers and the Kids First providers, and there was from both sides, and I don't think we can afford that anymore. And so one of the things I plan to do as mayor is probably so that my ed cabinet goals get treated seriously, at least I plan to have weekly cabinet meetings, and I plan to at least dedicate one of those weekly cabinet meetings each month to around our youth goals to see whether or not we're meeting them or not. And I mean all the departments, and I tell the story sometimes about that, how I was out at the San Antonio and was speaking to one of our public works staff, and I said, you know, those kids over there, will you do me a favor, next time you see them hanging out, call the beat officer, because we want them back in school. And they said, well, why would I do that? And I said, well, one, because if they miss 20 days of school, they're not going to be able to graduate this year, and we don't want the park to be a place where they're hanging out, right? You know, and we want them back in school. And the beat officer at least can come by and nudge them and get to know who they are. And, you know, if worse comes to worse, we'll call Measure DUI officers or whatever truancy staff we have. But it should be seen, because we have, a reason I was picking the public works guys, because he has a truck with a radio, right? So he could communicate. And it's that spirit. I think not only all city employees, but all neighborhood activists, neighborhood councils should care if kids are being truant, and they need to get that if kids get to hang out and don't go to school, their ability to keep up in school is going to be impaired, and if they don't graduate from high school, their chances of getting involved in neighborhood crime or being unemployed is going to be higher. So that we all need to care, and we need to sort of develop that sort of spirit.
Would your administration fully support OFCY?
Well, I think I said earlier, I've actually been defending OCFY quite a lot because people are pretty frantic about the police layoffs, and so I have to bring it home to people a lot. And I tell the Roosevelt story quite a lot. I said, the whole Village Center program, I think, was funded with less than $500,000. That would be 2 cops. The crime went down 40% around that neighborhood. And did a lot of other good in addition to crime. So you have to have this balanced approach. And so, no, there are people who say get rid of OFCY. And I helped negotiate the compromise, because I think the rendition before was a little bit too uncontrollable under the current economic conditions. But I helped negotiate what I thought was a fair compromise. We came around that. We passed that. I'm willing to defend that. I think it's fair. Because we're talking about 4% of a budget. And you have to weigh that as a visual. 4% for kids programs, 48% for police. I gotta think that if I get my 2,000 volunteers working with the city's toughest kids, that someday the number of cops I need in the city won't be 950 or 25, I think is what the police chief wants now. And we have to have someone who can weigh that at all times. That's not going to be totally beholden and a captive to the police, because the police pension fund is eating up the entire city budget and may drive us into bankruptcy. Not to mention the impact on having a full city. I think most Oaklanders don't want to live in a city that just has police and firefighters. Most people in the city love our parks, we love our kids, and it's very interesting in a poll that I saw very recently, the strongest argument for the extension of Measure Y to BB is the fact that it can intervene and help turn kids around. That is what people want even more than maintaining the number of police. That this is a city that should be smart enough and know in its heart that if we don't take care of our kids, we're just going to have more criminals, and that we need to have that balance. And so I think that that's the critical thing here.
Just to follow up on that, there has been some talk of perhaps some of the ballot measures that are currently on the ballot, if they do not pass, that there could be some attempt to repeal Measure D. Where would you and your administration stand on that?
I think I already answered. You asked, I thought I answered it. I helped write the Measure D compromise. I thought it was fair. I think 4%. Again, visual.
I think
here.
It's 3%, but that's
well.
Yeah.
It is.
But that's okay.
It depends on which you count of what percentage of what. But and I'll let Andrea say what we're legally at. But and remember, because that was that whole debate of what you count and what. So
right,
I'm sorry.
Right,
so
right,
I still remember
right.
in my head 4%. Though what I figured what we counted was 4%.
Okay.
So maybe, but the bottom line is that it is so small of a percentage of the budget, and the young people in the city under 25 are about 40% of the population. So under 20, no, I'm sorry, under what's Measure Y? Is it 25? Whatever it is, the Measure Y population is about 40% of the population minimally, and I'm sure there'll be new figures when the census data comes out. But that to me is a fair amount.
And you would support it then, I'm assuming.
I wouldn't support changing it.
Great.